Hey everybody, welcome back to another news-ish kind of version of What's That All About? Because this is after the full episode of the interview for Ross Coulthart from Need to Know, that podcast he does with Bryce Zabel, and the UFO Whistleblower, which I'm sure you've heard a ton about at this point. So I just have my takeaways from the interview. I really do tend to go to like a 30,000 foot version of stuff because like you, it's like you have a million things to do, I'm sure. So I want to get right to it. I want to give you a couple of the other headlines that sort of trickled in as the week went on, building up to the interview that was this past Sunday. It's right now Monday. I'm probably not going to be posting this until Tuesday, but that's whatever. Doesn't matter. So it's very important to note that the debunkers or skeptics definitely have their version of things or their beliefs on things. And that is perfectly understandable because I'll be honest, you do need a little bit of, I don't know, I call it faith, just belief. You got to have some belief to take what David Grusch is saying as truth. And you have to take into consideration how much vetting and all of that has gone on. But we'll get to that. I just want to mention a few other key updates. I had to write them down because it's, it's news and I don't want to screw up news. I mean, it's different when I just go off my own little tiny brain, but I don't want to screw up anybody else's words, right? So, okay. There was a sighting, an interesting sighting in Las Vegas this past week. And, or there was a sighting that was reported in this past week. It wasn't from this past week. Very important distinction there. But it's something that happened and debunkers or skeptics is like a feeding frenzy on this story. And I want to note something that isn't talked about much, and Ross Coulthart doesn't talk about it much either. He is not like hands down a believer. He's not I can compare him to me, I guess is the only person I can really compare it to. It's like I have a deep-rooted belief in this stuff and ufology and the possibilities and things like that. Ross is he's an investigative journalist. He wants the evidence. He wants the proof, right? So it's very important. People are, I think, more or less saying things about Ross like he didn't pressure him enough during the interview. But what you have to remember is it's all kind of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So like Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal, who wrote the article for the debrief, that was the initial article about the interview and about the whistleblower, and that was where it kind of like that was like the jumping off point that got everybody talking. Now he has to make sure not to cross their paths as far as in a way that would disrespect or take away from what their work was with David and what their interview revealed. So he's got to be real careful. It's a kind of a fine line he's got to follow. And he's just such a well-regarded and well-respected journalist. But that's why, skeptics kind of hopping in and hopping out and saying all this crap. It's almost like just shut up and listen. Listen first. So, okay, having said that, and I'll say this too. For now, he believes David. He believes him. Okay. And that has a lot to do with who has vouched for him. Okay. There's something to be said for the disinformation campaign that the government will keep and continuously push. So, and there's also disinformation agents. Okay. And interestingly enough, an example I have for you is, Nick Pope, who I really do like and respect and think he does great work and he has a lot of valuable things to say. He used to be a disinformation officer for the Ministry of Defense. So, you kind of have to keep that in mind. But so he was on News Nation this past week, actually, Nick Pope was. And he was talking about the Vegas eyewitness sighting. And it was about a family that, even along with their neighbors, plus a police officer, plus his partner, had body cam images that showed, I actually put the link below. I have a couple of links below in my description. This is one of them. This is the whole story about Vegas and what they saw and what their claims are. So they saw a streak in the sky, claimed to have seen, which is on a body cam footage, a streak in the sky, and then observed, heard a crash-like sound, okay? And then a little while later, in their backyard, this family that reported it said they saw tall, 10 feet tall beings with large eyes and large mouths, okay? And Nick Pope's reaction to that was sort of disappointing, but not surprising, okay? In essence, what he said was that since the whistleblower has come forward, all these new accounts have come out from people wanting to, steal their 15 minutes or whatever it is. And the thing is, though, okay, he talks about how pop culture, the lens of pop culture has created, a preconceived notion of what aliens and sightings and all this stuff could be. He brings up an example. Chris Carter, the creator of the X-Files, he used to sit in the back of the room of UFO conferences and listen to experiencers talk about what their life's like, having either contact with aliens, how they were abducted, or their ongoing, time with aliens, all these things, any kind of thing you can think of. And then he'd make it into X-Files episodes, which I don't know if you can remember that, but I mean, I've watched all the X-Files, so I know exactly what he's talking about. But, I'm not an idiot, and I know what's being told to me as a story and what's being told to me through the lens of what's fantastical. But I also can understand and listen to people and hear what they have to say about their own personal experiences and definitely tell the two apart. I mean, I'm not an idiot. Okay, so that being said, okay, the problem is, and this is a big one, he talks about how, all these not whistleblower, but all these new eyewitness sightings that come out. The whistleblower David Grusch just came out last week, okay, days ago. This sighting from Vegas was from May 1st. So there's, that's got to be explained to me. What are you talking about? This in particular sighting has nothing to do with the whistleblower. All of a sudden, I don't understand why this story would have been uncovered. Maybe back in the day when it was reported, it was buried. Another disinformation attempt. But anyway, I would need somebody to explain that to me. Okay? So, this report, though, about the eyewitness reports, it's just another example. It's just another example of there's no there. And we all know that there's there. So, I'm not part of the pop culture, mass hysteria. I'm not getting on that bandwagon thinking that that's even a possibility. So I don't know. But I'm going to get now to the interview that Ross Coulthart had. I watched the whole thing, just fresh off of watching it, actually. And like I've already said, I'm inclined to believe him. And after watching the interview, my beliefs are solidified, man. I am absolutely sold, lock, stock, and barrel. So I just think that David is the real deal. You got to keep something in mind too. Laws were passed. If a whistleblower is found to be lying, you go to jail. So this isn't a joke. He didn't come forward for 4 years. He was collecting, he was vetting, he was listening, he was doing his research. He wanted to have all his facts and ducks in a row before he came forward so that what he was saying would be taken seriously, because he was taking it seriously, because he didn't know what to believe at first either. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind. I also want to mention, there is something else I found at the end of this. I'm just going to tell you a very quick story. Like, it's information that came off of a very dark kind of website and on YouTube. And the Y-Files channel, it's a show on YouTube. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic channel, the Y-Files. But they found it. I just went and did a little bit more digging into it and found even more stuff. Holy crap. So stay tuned for that. But I'm going to get to just what I found out in listening to this interview. So he, David, waited 4 years, did his own vetting, like I said. And then once he had, all of his information together, he submitted it to the Inspector General, who cleared it as his information and everything that he gave over as urgent and credible. I know I've mentioned that in another episode, but you may not have watched it. So, those two words, urgent and credible, and it went right over to the Congress. Well, it was supposed to go right up to the Congress. Anyway, Grusch claimed, Grusch. I'm just going to call him David. He does claim that there are hundreds of other whistleblowers, but their hesitance come forward due primarily to the fear of losing their clearance and credibility, quite honestly, and possibly retaliation from the government. So they're kind of, they're sort of waiting to see how David is perceived by public mass media type stuff, or the government, like congressional hearings, anything like that. They just want to see how this plays out before they decide to come forward. I wish they would just come forward and have some balls like David did. But David says that for over 90 years, okay, the government has waged this disinformation campaign, and anyone attempting to come forward, they have suffered a wide variety of horrific consequences. Horrific. Anywhere from white-collar crimes against them, all the way through to murder. Yeah, I didn't stutter. Either did he. This is serious shit, people. Serious shit. So for those reasons, the whistleblowers are obviously, like I said, holding back, okay? I have some quick hits here, okay? There's just a dozen of them. They're real quick. This is from the interview, okay? David was a part of an unnamed, he did not give the name of the program, but it's a crash retrieval program that the government obviously has covered up, the Air Force. And at times when they were recovering these crafts, pilots of the crafts, non-human intelligent pilots, so not human, okay? And they, Grusch wants us, you and me, to be skeptical. He wants you to ask questions. He wants you to go to your government officials and demand answers. This is why he came forward. He also said there are more than, well, he didn't say. I got this information a little bit off path, but there are more than 12 non-human origin or NHOs that are in the possession of the government at this time. And there are advances that could be life-changing in a good way for humanity that are being kept from us. That is his primary reason for coming forward. He finds it absolutely disgusting what he knows that could change our lives for the better that we don't have any idea about, and he can't talk about it. It's all confidential at a level that he does not have clearance to disclose. Now, okay, the first non-human origin craft that was recovered was in 1933 in Italy. Of course, that was covered up. The Vatican knows everything. Everything. Think about what they've said recently in the past couple of years about aliens, about other worldly beings. It's pretty obvious once you start looking around at that. Now, some non-human intelligences are malevolent, okay? They're malevolent, and that means not cool with humans. That means when he was asked by Ross if any of these non-human intelligences have hurt humans, have any humans been killed? They have. They have. Humans have been killed by malevolent non-human intelligences. That one gave me chills, and I just got them again. Russia and China have their own versions of these. They have their own. This whole thing is really world power wide, okay? Now, think something to remember. In 1971, there was a treaty between Russia and US, okay? It was created, there was actually something called there's a part of it, in its Article 3, and it states both sides will disclose any UFO at the time, to avoid, like, they'll report it to each other to avoid blaming one another for anything, like any kind of sign of an aggression or something. Like say, no, it's not us. We just don't know what these things are. But yeah, they're flying around. It's like, okay, just to avoid war, basically. So there is that treaty was put in place in 1971. I'd never heard about it, but now there are also private aerospace companies in possession of these materials, of these recovered crafts. It's rumored to be like Lockheed Skunk Works, Martin, and Bigelow. Those are the big ones. And David doesn't want fame, and he doesn't want fortune. He didn't get paid for anything. He's not getting paid for anything he's doing when it pertains to this disclosure at all. He just hopes that by doing what he's doing, okay, it could create a moment of pause for everyone. Somehow to unite in a way, I guess. And like Ross said, he gave him a term. He said, oh, so kind of like a human family. And David said, that's a great way of putting it. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what we are, everybody. We're a human family. That's it. This is a common denominator uniting all of us, okay? We're a human family. I don't know. It's for you to digest. That's it. That was that. That was my review of the interview. It was pretty intense. I have the link below that will bring you to the interview. It does go through the Black Vault though, which is John. He's, a skeptic. He's not a debunker. I don't think he's a debunker. I think he's just I call him a heavy skeptic. I like him. I think he's smart. But anyway, okay, so what I told you earlier, what I mentioned, this holy crap moment I had with the Y-Files finding this other information online. Okay, so this is called 4chan Whistleblower. I put the link below. Okay. And the video is actually, it's like a robotic voice talking and answering questions that people are posting. And he talks about his time working at an underwater base within the Bermuda Triangle. Okay. He claims to have been a craft analysis member of this facility. It's called the construction facility. Okay. It doesn't have any updated information. He doesn't have any updated information from the last 2 years, though, because he did stop working at this place. And he's only coming forward now. And by forward, I mean he's doing it anonymously. But he is in the 4th stage of liver cancer. So he claims that he is doing this now because he says, why not? But again, he keeps his identity hidden. I don't know, whatever. But some claims, again, I'm just doing them quick hits, okay? UFOs, are primarily unmanned drones. UFOs are built to spec each time they are deployed. UFOs are created by a mobile construction facility. It hides in the ocean. It's mobile. It can move. Okay. And the construction facility destroys anything that comes close to it and will disappear for days when approached aggressively. That's kind of interesting. And keep in mind, this is in the Bermuda Triangle. The U.S. believes that the facility has been active on Earth for at least 100 years or much, much longer. For example, it says it is believed that this construction facility has been around since at least 4000 BC. Shit. Okay? They mostly want very little to do with us. They being the extraterrestrials. Okay? This all sort of was disappointing to read, but I went, oh my God, it kind of makes sense. Okay. They want very little to do with us until we start to talk about or act out on war and nuclear options. It's one of the reasons why you see them so often at critical events. Okay? Now, as mentioned before, each UFO is built to spec and purpose. That's why they always look different. You notice how there's always like a little difference between how people describe them. They're built to spec. Depends on what those specific UFOs are doing. Is it typographical? Is it geography? Is it abduction? Is it whatever? They're not really interested in abduction though. Hang on. One of this whistleblower supervisors said something to him that really stuck with him. Okay. They, being the aliens, act like keepers of a zoo. We're the animals. Uninterested in the daily life of wildlife until there's a problem. Wow. He also claims that they cut their losses when crashes occur or are recovered, along with their personnel. So again, goes back to the recovery of David's claims that they have found pilots with these crafts. Aliens just put their hands up and go, all right. They're very harsh. When asked if they are a breakaway civilization of humans that escaped a previous cycle of cataclysm due to their advanced knowledge, the whistleblower answers that the U.S. believes they are foreign to our world, which is expected, okay? He also says they believe the construction facility has learned what is and isn't hostile. Usually it will just move away or stay deeper into the water. It doesn't fire on civilian boats. So it can tell the difference. It's learned that. It's evolved to know that what that is. Well, they're pretty fucking smart. So I would think that kind of an evolution would be an easy leap for them. They are humanoid. Okay? They are humanoid. The construction facility has a weapon that can destroy matter. Okay? In its entirety. It also ruins anything electronic in the vicinity. Whistleblower says that Jacques Vallée is the closest so far to knowing what's really going on. Wow. I love me some Jacques Vallée. Jacques. It's French. But no one really knows. They're always about 5 steps ahead of us, he says. Now, this guy is unaware of big names, though. He'd never heard of Lou Elizondo, for instance, or like Dr. Stephen Greer, Tom DeLonge. Like he had no idea who those people were. But he did say, if you mention Bob Lazar's name, they could literally, those words, if you get his name out of your mouth, quote, you could be taken out back and put down like a dog. Do the math, why? Wow. You know what that says to me? Shut the fuck up about Bob Lazar. He's telling the truth. Probably too much of it. Element 115, anyone? His favorite find throughout his time was a lab that they never actually fully understood, but since he was an analyst of the crafts, it really fascinated him. But they destroyed it before he could really fully understand it. And he says, it makes me wonder whether a meaningful distinction between scientific study and amusement still exists for them. Like, are we like toys? So someone asked the question, which I thought was great. When will we be able to hang out with aliens? I thought that was so funny. And he goes, his answer is rather amusing and fairly insulting. That's me saying that. He says, do you have any stupid cousins that destroy everything they touch? When do you want to see them again? Basically calling us a bunch of idiots that just break stuff. I'm clumsy. I do break stuff. He refers to orbs as hammers. Okay? He says that due to the massive light and speed of the objects, they appear to be orbs. But when they're stationary, they look just like hammers. I thought that was kind of interesting. They, aliens, are either waiting for us to mature to show themselves, or they're waiting for something bigger, like mommy ship, to arrive. And in the meantime, they're trying to make it sure that we do not kill ourselves or the planet or ruin it, because they are using our resources. They want gold. I have no idea why. That goes back to like Anunnaki time. They needed gold to repair their atmosphere wherever they were from. So now the Chinese were able to replicate something that they had, except the fact it was like a mining tool that you can program to mine for specific elements, and it keeps breaking. So they are not too concerned with the advancements that anyone's made, because nothing's going to really work. They don't have the key to what makes everything work. So they're not really worried. He also mentions, obviously he's a whistleblower, so he doesn't care at this point, but he says Bob Lazar's discovery of element 115, like I mentioned, is enormous. He said only one person is allowed to handle the element, and everyone else is forbidden from touching it or interacting with it. He also mentions that our Space Force will be playing a more active role in what comes next, and to pay attention to that. I'll be honest, I haven't really been paying attention to the Space Force, so I'm going to start paying attention to the Space Force. And he said that they resemble, he's talking about the aliens, because they do resemble something that we've seen written about in the UFO topics or pop culture. They are smaller than humans and look like typical gray aliens. Holes for ears. They can look very bright. They can look at very bright objects without being like blinded by them. Blinded by the light. I've never seen one move their mouth, he says. It's probably because they speak telepathically, but he's also never interacted with any. So he does talk about an alloy that goes around all the crafts. I'm guessing it has something to do with element 115, but it's impossible for us to duplicate it here. So for us to do it as humans, I guess. But that was my find. I mean, that's pretty interesting stuff. Okay. And if you want that, like I said, links below, and I'm going to wrap it up. I know it's been a very, very long episode, but very important things, everybody. Very important things. So until next time, I hope you are staying happy and healthy, and stay weird. Okay. And take care. Bye.